I guess at this time, I'm going to reminisce a little bit about my life as a Boy Scout. I think it all began when I was probably about the age of 9, when I found a book in the library at home called A Handbook for Boys. Apparently it was my father's book that he had when he was a Boy Scout way back when.
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that book is on your on a bookshelf in your study at home.
I'm not sure that that particular book is.
Mm-hmm.
I do have several
Mm-hmm.
of the Handbook for Boys, but I also recall that what I enjoyed was the pictures as much as
Mm-hmm.
anything, and the pictures were of tying various types of knots, how to build campfires, how to pitch pup tents,
Mm-hmm.
and for a 9-year-old boy, that was a very exciting thing. So eventually I became aware of the fact that there was an organization called Cub Scouts,
Mm-hmm.
which were, for lack of a better term, were junior Boy Scouts,
Mm-hmm.
or at least the youngest age category. And so I joined the Cub Scouts, and my mother served as a den mother, which was sort of a sergeant in terms of the responsibility, keeping the other boys in line during meetings. But some of the things that the Cub Scouts did was building little racing cars
Mm-hmm.
out of wood.
The Pinewood Derby.
Yes, the
Pinewood Derby.
what we call Pinewood Derby. And also it seemed to me I enjoyed carving statues or images or whatever you want to describe out of bars of P&G laundry soap. Now these bars of soap were almost the size of bricks, and they were nice and easy to
Mm-hmm.
carve. But I also was enamored by the fact that the Cub Scouts wore uniforms. And I can remember my grandpa Gluttony, buying me a Cub Scout hat. It was a little cap, but it was blue and had some gold
yeah.
piping on it. And of course, eventually I wound up having a Cub Scout shirt. Now this was during the height of the Depression in the 1920s and early 30s. So it was seldom that any member of the scouting organization wore a full uniform.
Right. Yeah.
Just having
Pieces
parts.
of it. Yeah. Sure.
Well, anxiously, I waited until I was 12 years of age so I could become an official Boy Scout. And I remember the troop was Troop 133, and it met in the basement of Epiphany Lutheran Church, which happened to be the church that my family attended at that time. I was very much impressed to be a tenderfoot scout and take the oath in front of a 3-tier stand that had candles on it that were lit for the particular
Right.
ceremony of joining. And I entered the Boy Scouts with lots of enthusiasm and lots of vigor. Later in life, I learned that one of the things that attracted me to scouting was the fact that you could earn degrees. In other words, you could advance from a tenderfoot scout to a second-class scout to a first-class scout to star scout, life, and eventually eagle. And so I decided that I wanted to go through the ranks as quickly as possible, because every time you did a certain accomplishment of a requirement, you were rewarded.
Right, yes.
And nothing that a little kid likes better than
those rewards,
than being rewarded. So I started out looking at these requirements and decided I would move from one rank to the other as quickly as possible. Well, to do this, you had to do certain things. And one of the things was that I had joined the Scouts in January in Milwaukee during the Wisconsin winter, and you were pretty well limited to what you could do indoors.
Right.
Well, one of the tests was to be able to build a fire.
Build a fire, yeah, of course.
So I wanted to pass this test, so I figured I needed some practice. And the place to practice was the basement.
Oh no, this is not going to end well.
Well, I knew a little bit about the dangers of fire and the necessity of safety, so I used as a fire pit a sewer drain.
Oh, no.
in the cement.
I hope it wasn't off-gassing methane.
Basement floor. And so I built fires in the home until I was able to do it reasonably successfully.
Did anyone ever say it was not a good idea to build a fire in the basement?
Well, I never asked for permission. I probably was aware that I would be turned down. Well, at any rate, when the weather was such that you could do things outside, I was able to pass this requirement, amongst others, and it was probably within a month after I joined that I became no longer a tenderfoot scout, but a second-class scout.
Yeah.
And I worked my way through those requirements so that within 2 months after I joined, I had worked myself into a second-class scout.
Dad, I'm going to turn off the tape now. Just to keep these file sizes manageable, let's do these videos in like 5-minute chunks, okay? So I'll say this one and I'll turn it back on again.
Okay.